Hello and welcome to Look for Light, a podcast where we dive into the world of The Last of Us. I am your host, Stuart Trainer, and I'm joined, as always, by someone who would absolutely doodle all over the walls of her safe house. It's Jess Sterling. Jess, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling broken and brokenhearted, just beaten down by the show, Stuart.
It took 5 episodes and now you're broken down? Bill and Frank didn't do that?
Oh, they did, but then I got rebuilt up a little bit, only for my dreams to be crushed yet again by
Yeah.
Henry and Sam. They really did me in.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to be a recurring theme as part of this whole season. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's almost like we know what's coming up, right?
Yeah. But it's a good one. It is a good one. Getting to meet Henry and Sam. I'm really excited to talk about the adaptation choices for this episode
hmm
specifically and the changes they made. And yet again, me like singing the praises of an adaptation and making meaningful changes. I'm really excited to talk about it because I think there are a lot of really good choices being made here.
Yeah, they really are. So for those of you joining and not knowing what the hell we're on about, we're covering episode 5 of season 1 of The Last of Us, Endure and Survive. If you're new here, subscribe. It's wonderful. You can follow us. We get delivered to your podcatcher every single week. You can subscribe to us at Look for the Light Pod. You can find us on all the socials and the same handle. And additionally, you can also find us on YouTube where you can see our lovely faces, accompanied by a couple of quotes here and there that we kind of throw in to kind of like illustrate the points and stuff. And also, you can send in your feedback at lookforlightpodcast@gmail.com. I think we should just dive into it this time.
We have
Should we just
to.
get into
We
it?
have to. Yeah.
Amazing. Here's where we kind of have the biggest departure, I think, from the game is we open with Kansas City and we open to them overthrowing FEDRA, which is something we totally have never got in the game. This is a completely new invented scene. Obviously in the game, it was set in Pittsburgh, so the departure from location is something completely different. But we've never had the overthrowing of a QZ before. This is something kind of wild, and I think it's totally true to what I would expect this to be like, is that it's absolute carnage. It looks like the whole world is just a mess, which is what you would
Yeah.
expect, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because in the game, obviously, they come into the aftermath of an uprising, but being that this is a television show, we're able to not necessarily always have to be with Joel and Ellie, and so we're able to see the overthrowing of the government. And we've
Mhm.
heard rumblings of this. We talked about this a little bit on the last podcast of Frank talking about his was it the Maryland QZ being overthrown or something like that. And so now we actually get to see it, and I think it was such a smart choice to have Henry and Sam not just be fellow travelers like they are in the
Mhm.
game with Joel and Ellie, but actually be a part of this, be involved in the storyline. It really connects them to Kansas City. It's possible they could have been successful without making that decision, but I think it really like connects us to this location. And I also think without Henry and Sam being tied to the Kathleen storyline, I just don't really care about that storyline at all. If not for them, nothing against Melanie Linsky. She is a star and an icon. You will never hear me say a bad word against her. I just don't think we care about that storyline without Henry and Sam being so intimately tied to it.
Yeah, you need something that links it, other than just being a location of threat for Joel and Ellie. You need something that links it to Joel and Ellie, and Henry and Sam are absolutely that. And having them have a direct link to Kathleen, a very personal one as well, completely kind of makes everything just gel incredibly well. In terms of Kathleen's approach, I can't say that like I would buy into the whole immediately kind of like we've overthrown Fedra. I need to find this person. But I mean, this is why Kathleen is the way she is. She's being fueled by revenge and she's absolutely just out for blood because she's got a vendetta. to the point where she is willing to kill off an entire room of captive prisoners who she even acknowledges. She's like, "Oh, you'll get a trial, you'll be found guilty, and that'll be it." It's like she's leaning into the fact that she knows that she's doing a bad thing here because she's just like, "No, I just need to get the result I need." That for me was probably like the final nail in the coffin of whether or not I'm going to have any kind of uh almost like kind of gray area in terms of rooting for Kathleen a little bit, because I was like, maybe she can be a bit sympathetic. Maybe there is something that they're going to reveal a bit further down the line, which kind of is justifying the extent of this. And I was like, crikey, there's like the way in which she almost revels in her adoption of just the evil, I guess, of it, and just being kind of so, let's say, fair with the whole approach was just too much for me. I was like, crikey, she is number one on the hit list. I was like, if she gets bumped off this episode, I'll be a happy chappy.
Yeah, I think the death of her brother, who is the face, the leader of the uprising, the revolution, I think that's what finally pushes her over the edge. I feel like we can look at other characters, Ellie being one of them, who has this killer instinct kind of built in, who has this hardness about them underneath the surface. And it's possible she could live her entire life and not do anything this morally bankrupt. And
Hmm.
yet, the death of her brother and the 20 years of oppression and torture and murder that they've put up with as the QZ has pushed her over the edge, and I think she's finally broken. I like that we do understand her motives, and at the very least, I would say, even if we are 85% or more against her, there is this teeny tiny section of that is understandable to her plight and understandable of,
Hmm.
like, she has spent 20 years being kicked around and her brother has been killed, and he was the good one in her mind. He was the good one of the
Yes.
two of them, and now he is gone, and so she is now taking up that mantle in a different way, and she recognizes that she's not him. She is a lot more brutal than him, and I think that's because she is finally broken. And so it's
Hmm.
really interesting to get such a diversion from the game where we don't have any faces or names or anything like that in this group that is now running Kansas City. It is a group of monsters essentially that just kill for sport. And they really do change that in the show in a way that I think works really well, to get a face, get a name, get a motive behind why they're doing what they're doing, and to also separate, like, show how different cities handled the results of outbreak day, like
Hmm.
how they took charge, how FEDRA differed from state to state, from city to city. This is just one example of FEDRA being like so corrupt and treating their citizens like absolute garbage to the point where there was a revolution. Um,
Hmm.
I think that it does that really, really well. And Kathleen is kind of the face of this entire thing.
Yeah. And I think it's good to put a face to this because I think last episode was unveiling the environmental threat, and this is now saying, okay, well, what's behind that environmental threat? Why is Kansas so deadly? It's not just an empty city. Like there are people roaming, and people are the threat. So why are these people the threat? Why are they not just saying, "Oh, here are strangers who possibly could join our plight and help us"? Why are they being so hostile immediately? And you come to realize it's because those outside the QZ walls are struggling for resources because of all the subjugation of Fedra, and those who are actively hunting Henry and Sam are trying to get them. Like it explains the whole motives behind everyone that makes the environmental threat an actual thing.
Mhm.
And I think in terms of putting a face on things, obviously we get to see Henry and Sam. We get them arriving in the attic with the doctor from the last episode, who's we know their fate, which is kind of rough to go back. The kind of the use of the flashbacks here, but not really kind of being a full flashback scene. It's kind of like these interwoven scenes. I think was really kind of done incredibly well and shows a lot of storytelling immediately in the sense of like they talk about weapons and the both of them acknowledge, well, we're not shooting our way out of this because these people aren't fighters, they're survivors. And of course, we come to discover that Sam is deaf, which is an incredible choice for this episode. You seem to be very on board with this choice, Jess. I think this is probably, I think you're, I'm willing to say one of your favorite choices of the departure from the game.
Oh, definitely. It is high on the list. I much prefer the show version of what they do with Henry and Sam. One of the biggest reasons is because of their choice to have Sam be deaf. And I did listen to the official Last of Us podcast, and on it they were talking about wanting to be able to differentiate between Joel and Ellie as a relationship and Henry and Sam. They were worried that it would feel too samey. And so, what is a
Yes.
way in which we can do that? Well, having Sam be deaf and having their communication be very different using sign language, having those scenes be extremely quiet, which will make the podcast editing a little bit of a struggle to pull quotes for. um,
Yes.
but to have those scenes be a little bit more quiet, rely more on the music cues and the body language, to have that relationship work, it is so smart. And just like obviously including representation, right? Like all of those things are so important. This actor, the only thing that was going through my mind every single scene with Henry and Sam is this actor that plays Sam better be getting more work because he is brilliant as this little
Mhm.
kid. Like he's whip smart. He is the emotion on his face, right? Like this choice, and you can't look past the danger, the inherent danger in not being able to hear in a world like this. And just think about it, the moment it's dark, there goes your communication, gone. You can no longer communicate with somebody if you cannot see them. And so just all of those kind of pieces of the puzzle work so well in having this this relationship between Henry and Sam. Um, I adore it. Obviously, we also age down Sam, which we'll get
Mhm.
into when we talk about them meeting Ellie, because there's a little bit more of like a she's his elder in a way
Mhm.
that isn't present in the video game. And, you know, watching him decorate the walls of this attic was it's so joyful, and yet it hurts every time because you know what's coming. Um, him drawing superheroes, right? Like I love the character of Sam so much. He is so again, endure and survive, right? Like that's what he does. And it's just brilliant. Everything about it is so brilliant, and I can't believe like this choice, obviously very thoughtful and very difficult of a decision to make, Stuart, when you think about the fact that you are taking your potential pool of actors and really limiting yourself by saying we want a deaf black kid between the ages of this and this who's shorter than Bella Ramsey. Like we're really like
Mhm.
narrowing down our pool of potential options, and it works out brilliantly. I can't hype this adaptation choice more. Like I truly love it. It probably is my favorite break from, well, besides Bill and Frank obviously. I think it's my favorite like break from the game.
Yeah, I think it works so effectively, and I think it's helped by the fact that so when they released the episodes when this first came out, alongside on YouTube, they would do these like 6 to 10 minute long kind of behind the scenes making of kind of YouTube videos all about it, and it showed that like the crew started learning ASL as well. Bella picked it up fairly kind of rapidly. Sam's brother Henry, the actor who played him, whose name is eluding me right now, he didn't know ASL, so had to like kind of learn that.
Lamar
And
Johnson, that's
Lamar
Henry.
Johnson, that's it, yes.
Mhm.
And he had to like kind of learn this, and by the end of it, many of the crew had been learning alongside and kind of made Kayvon like feel one of the crew, and also was just really fostering this kind of environment of just normalizing everything, which kind of made it, I think, feel like it wasn't just shoehorned in for the trope of it almost,
And
and it
that's
was just an
not
effective storytelling element.
yeah, that's not even his his biggest struggle, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's the whole leukemia storyline. That is the reason why Henry ends up becoming a collaborator, a rat, whatever you want to call it, is because his brother is sick with leukemia. It has nothing to do with him
Yes.
being deaf. So it just goes to show that, like, gosh, I don't know. Obviously, I assume everyone who's listening to this podcast is in agreement. Like, representation is always a great thing, but this is just like such a prime example of it. Like,
Yeah.
they picked this kid who was unknown, right? Like, they found him on, like, Twitter. Like, it wasn't like he was even, like, in a pool of auditioners. No, like, it
Mhm.
just goes to show that, like, he was the exact right person for this role, and we wouldn't have otherwise gotten that. So
Yeah.
I love the choice. I love the relationship between Henry and Sam, and the fact that it's seeded very early on, like, we only have 11 days. We only have so much food until we are out, and we have no ammunition. All we have are guns,
Mhm.
which are a threat of violence. But the minute that people find out they're not loaded, the threat's out the window. We only have 11 days to figure something out. It really puts a nice tight timeline on what they have to do.
Yeah, and even the comment from the doctor, it's like, "Oh, we're not going to be ones to shoot ourselves out of here anyway." Like, it just foreshadows this whole element of Henry being more of a pacifist, whereas in the game, obviously, Henry is a bit more active. With Joel,
Mhm.
kind of he's very much a kind of an NPC that mirrors what Joel does. It's like, well, there are two enemies. Okay, you take that one, I'll take this one, and that's totally not the case here. Joel has to step into a role of a protector once more, and it's an incredible way of doing that, but also having equal footing because, okay, well, Joel can serve the protection element, he can clear the path, but Henry's going to be the one to find the path, which I think was absolutely necessary to do because it gives each and every one a real reason to do what they're doing.
I don't know what the next step is with something like this, but if I lower my gun, we didn't hurt you, so you don't hurt us. Right?
That's right.
It's a weird fucking tone, man.
That's just the way he sounds. He has an asshole voice. Joel, tell him he's okay.
Everything is great.
Dude.
Fuck.
And of course, I mean, none of this could have happened unless we get to the point where Henry and Sam sneak up on Joel and Ellie. As kind of expected, the glass that was put down was not effective, and as we found at the very close of the last episode, totally wasn't, as Joel gets completely ambushed in his sleep and awakes to a kid with a gun to his face. This is, I think, so good because the way in which Ellie wakes Joel up of just like panic, Joel immediately kind of goes to go for violence and realizes, nope, that's not an option here. And then we get, I don't know how they do this. I don't know how you can inject humor into such a tense scene of just, he just sounds like an asshole.
You hire Bella Ramsey. That's how you do it, you know? She's so like Ellie as a character is always able to kind of lighten the mood, and she's
Mhm.
just like, I know he sounds like an asshole, but he's not. Joel, tell them you won't do anything.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
He's like, you're fine or whatever. He's like, that's a weird fucking tone, man. So
Yeah.
good.
But they both
Um,
have something the other one needs. And
yeah.
even though Joel is not someone who plays well with others, I would say, I think I think without Sam included in this duo, I don't think Joel helps at all. I don't think he
No.
works with Henry whatsoever. I think it is the mere fact that Henry is a protector of Sam in the way that Joel is a protector of Ellie. Yes, the relationships are slightly different, but doesn't change the fact that they are responsible for these kids. And I think despite Joel not wanting it to, that affects his judgment, especially once he sees Ellie bonding with Sam. How do you not want to protect that kid?
Yeah. And this is the thing. This is what we've been building up to for this like entire episode run is this like this slow development of a relationship between Joel and Ellie. And whether Joel likes it or not, he is getting close to Ellie. And he is, I think, happy to see Ellie hanging out with another kid, being a kid, and being goofy and silly and stuff like that. And so of course he kind of makes his protector role even more like present and apparent. Is that he's like, well, I've got to protect these kids. Like I have to fulfill that role. I liked the way in which Henry presented himself as the most wanted man in Kansas. Is like, way to hype yourself up, and also to
Mhm.
really give a bad sales pitch for what you're going for here. It's like, yeah, do you want to kind of like, I'll give you a way out, but like everyone's after me?
Mhm.
But then also to frame it as like, well, you're probably number two, so we're in the same situation. It was a great way of bonding, while also kind of just
Yeah.
really setting the stakes of just, yeah, this is a huge deal and everyone's after us, so we've got to get out.
It
Um,
is
and yeah,
interesting because he presents himself as, "I'm a collaborator," right? "I'm a rat,"
mm,
which immediately puts Joel on the defense of like, "Well, I don't work with rats." And he's like, "Today you do. You need
mhm,
me like I need you. Maybe I haven't killed anybody and maybe I don't have any ammunition, but I know a way out that nobody else knows, and I'll be able to help you if you can help me." Um it's interesting that the leukemia reveal and the why behind what he did isn't revealed until later.
mhm.
It's a little bit Joel like in being a little putting those walls up, putting the defenses up. That's not something that's Joel's business. All he needs to know is we need each other, and that should be enough for him to want to work with us.
Yeah, because as we've seen, Joel is the kind of person that will not stop for someone who needs help in the road. He's like, no, I'm going to protect my own first. But if you come to me with, I don't know, something that I need, then I will probably compromise in that sense. But unless you are useful to him, he's going to bulldoze through it and kind of completely come out the other end. I thought the plan to get out. I mean, this was obviously this is Henry just keeping a little bit of information back to get Joel to buy in, and it's a slow trickle of just, well, I don't quite know the full way. Oh, yeah, they did clear it out 3 years ago. I did get my information. Like this slow trickling of just, oh, not the fullest story is so well done, because if Henry had been just forthright with all the information, Joel absolutely would have noped out of this situation. I think that he might have been conflicted in that, but I can't see him making a decision where he'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll go along with this. This is a suicide mission. Um, they get lucky, but I mean, it's a dodgy plan to say the least.
Certainly. And we know once he says, "Oh, we're going to take tunnels," FEDRA drove the infected underground 15 years ago, but it's
Hmm.
since been completely cleared out since 3 years ago. And we saw last episode the rumblings underneath the ground. We know that can't possibly be true. We know there's still people down there. And keeping in mind that um that Kathleen and her crew of revolutionaries only took over a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
So and even Henry says himself, Fedra did one thing right, and it was putting them all underground and then clearing them out. Well, Kathleen and her people have not been doing that, have not been following through on what Fedra started of clearing out underground. And so, unfortunately, they have a problem again. Henry doesn't know that. All he knows is Kathleen is afraid of going in those tunnels. Therefore, her and her people will not be down there. It is our only way out of the city. And he's willing to take that risk because, I mean, we have to think about Henry and Sam's history in this world. Since Fedra drove all of them underground 5 years ago, they have not seen any infected in their city. Therefore, they don't
hmm,
really understand what it's like to go up against them. They know Joel and Ellie have. And so, in their mind, that's enough of a protection. You two can protect us, and we know the route out. I think it's different from Joel and Ellie's perspective, where they've encountered these creatures, and therefore they are rightfully terrified to go up against them again.
yeah. I thought it was really interesting that Henry was the one to bring the clicker turn up, and I
Hmm.
love the way in which some of these things are handled, and particularly in like kind of zombie genre related elements of just you would get variants of names of different kind of creatures. Like Ellie
Hmm.
refers to it as like the bat like ones who kind of have no eyes kind of thing, and yet Henry's there with like the name that we know them by, which is clickers, which is a great way of like just again world building and showing the variance in like locations and
It's the
kind of
same thing as an accent or a dialect. Like,
yeah,
it's going to be
exactly
different from
that.
location to location because, let's face it, it's not like they're going on the internet and Googling, like, what do I call
Hmm.
these things? Like, no one
Yeah,
knows what each other's calling them.
Yeah. Speaking of which, googling what something is. The writing implement that Sam is using, it's called a magic slate. I did look that up after last
Magic
week's episode.
slate.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a little bit of acetate over a wax sheet, and obviously once you draw on it, it sticks.
Brilliant.
Apparently invented like in the 1920s. I was like,
Oh shit, no
that's
kidding.
old as anything. But yes, but I love these small little touches of world building and additional storytelling. I love the fact that obviously we get the passage of time and how long it's been since the night of the overthrowing of Fedra and where we are now with the fact that they have 10 days worth of food, and then Sam is saying that he's hungry. So of course that, I mean, tells us how long it's been since we've seen the Doctor. Maybe it's been a smidge longer as well, because probably they've tried to ration that out even further than what they had done. Maybe they haven't eaten for a day or so before that. But there's also like the environmental story, like the kind of not environmental storytelling, but like the secondary kind of storytelling with all these little elements that are kind of seeded in, of just the fact that they cleared things out 3 years ago and it seemed like Federal were on top of the whole infected thing. I don't think that that's like a one and done situation. Like Fedra, yes, they want to maintain control and they want to like maintain power, but surely that's easier if there were no infected and they didn't have to use resources for it. So that tells me that perhaps 3 years ago, that was the last efforts of them clearing out the underground, and it's taken 3 years for the Kansas QZ to be overthrown by Kathleen and her brother and their kind of resistance forces, which goes to show the plight that they have gone through. This isn't just a revolution that started, like, it's kicked off because of Kathleen's brother's death, and that has been the like kind of the last thing that's turned the tide on this. But I imagine for the last 3 years, it's been small skirmishes, just like the Fireflies in Boston. It's been kind of these little things that have just been nipping at the heels of Fedra, enough that Fedra have dropped the ball and have allowed this to kind of like slowly build up. This is why I love this show. It's just all these little details that mean things. They're not just
Yeah.
thrown in because it's like, oh, okay, well, this seems like it'll work, and it doesn't really kind of make sense sometimes. I think everything is so well thought out because we're building on something that's established, and I think you've got passionate people that are like, okay, now let's just crank it up a little bit. Let's turn the dial up ever so slightly.
The world building is incredible, and the fact that each location is treated as an individual piece of a larger component, where it's
Mhm.
how would a different city react to everything, what would their section of the government employ, um is really fascinating, and getting to then meet characters from those locations and see how everything they've gone through informs the decisions that they make. It's really, really interesting. And so yeah, they do agree we're gonna get this foursome going into the tunnels to try to escape, and get on the outside of Kansas City and get the heck away from Kathleen and her goons.
To the edge of the universe and back. Endure and survive. Endure, survive. Endure, survive. Fuck yeah, man.
Now keep it down. We're not out yet.
And so they venture down, I think, straight into the from the building that they're in, because they go into the lobby. They kind of make sure that they're kept out of sight, and particularly they kind of like find a maintenance tunnel, which I would imagine is because they're usually wired like tapped into these kind of huge buildings because they're massive pieces of infrastructure. And they head down, and they kind of realize immediately vibes are off. It's dark, it's quiet, and it's unnerving. And Joel, really unsurprisingly, tells Ellie to take a gun out, which I thought was so telling, because I think ordinarily Joel wouldn't. Joel would be like, no, I'm the protector. I'll have the gun out. But Henry and Sam, he's still weary and is still a bit worried. So he's like, yeah, take your gun out. And that look.
When she pulls it out of her pocket instead of her bag, the dirty look that he gives her is so funny. And I especially love Henry saying like, wow, your dad's like a real pessimist. And simultaneously, he's not my dad.
Not
I'm
my
not her
dad.
dad.
Yeah.
It's so good. But it's and this is where, again, like, yes, it's an adaptation and we've made major changes here, especially in this episode. but the exact like underground settlement that they find that is like like exactly the same as the one from the video game, like kids toys, it immediately tugs at your heartstrings where you're like, oh my god, oh, there were kids living down here and they're no longer here, which only means bad things.
Yeah, I think this was so good to include because the story of Ish was one that was told through environmental kind of storytelling within the game, and is one that really kind of hit people. I think this is the one that made many people kind of realize what could be done in terms of the storytelling within this world. Because yeah, you can get the odd note here and there, but this told quite an expansive story, and you get it in many kind of video games of them kind of telling short stories within a kind of wide narrative element. But this one kind of hits hard because of the nature of kind of who was sheltering down here, the protocols that they had enacted. Like there's the whiteboard that has like only reveal the password if you don't know the visitor kind of thing. Beware, like make sure the doors are locked. And again, it kind of makes you think of like people would have retreated down below the surface in the hopes of evading the infected, but the infected were the ones that were driven down, which probably led to what is the downfall of whatever this little settlement was, which was incredibly horrible to think about, especially considering it's like a little nursery.
Yeah. And it's there's like comic books, there's toys, there's soccer, like there's a community down here. And I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Was it, do we have any indication or do we know from the video game how long they were underground for? Like, how long did this civilization exist for?
Ooh, I'm trying to remember from the video game. I don't know if there's an indication of time frame, but I think given the fact that there are so many murals and that like it feels lived in, I think it certainly gives the impression that they were there for a number of years.
And that's
Certainly.
the
It's
thing.
quite a huge like kind of settlement as well. Like in the
Right.
game, it's not just the one room and a couple of other annex rooms or anything.
There's
It's like an
beds, there's,
expansive network, right? Yeah.
yeah. And I can't help but think about like, gosh, being, I mean, we all lived through a pandemic and having to be inside for a while, but we still saw sunlight. Like we still were able to step outside, you know? These people weren't afforded that luxury. They didn't see the sun for what is probably literal years. And
Hmm.
we all know how like seasonal affective disorder like hits us all, right? Like it being so dark all the time. Imagine doing that but for literal years and being terrified the entire time. Kids are resilient and can go through a lot of that stuff and still come out on the other side okay. So it's interesting to imagine an entire settlement being underground. And Stuart, I don't know if it reminds you, this is really going to date the podcast significantly. Have you seen the news story about that deep sea anglerfish that came to the surface recently? And
Hmm.
how like it was a female fish. It's usually like thousands of feet, miles, whatever the heck, under the water, and it came to the surface, which is like super, super rare for it to be seen there. And then, of course, it died like shortly thereafter, and people are wondering like, why? Why was it come? Why did it just see the sun and like want to check it out and see what was going on? And it makes me think of that, like these people being like underground for so, so, so long, and then who knows what happened to them, and we don't really get an answer. Like, did they ever
Hmm.
get to see the sun? It's like such a sad story, and it's almost like you're walking through a museum of a civilization of like whatever happened to these people. Like someone broke a rule one time, possibly there was an infection that broke out, possibly they were driven out of this space, who knows? But either way, it is incredibly sad while you're looking at like the cheerful surroundings of like a nursery and a soccer ball and kids games and toys, you know?
Yeah. It's a really rough small little story, and like I think in the game you get the sense that obviously you find infected around, so you kind of
Right.
get that happened, but you don't know why, you don't know how. And I love like the analogy there of you saying about like anglerfish like seeing the light, and just like maybe it is just that, I don't know, maybe it's you're captivated by what is out there, curiosity of just what is beyond, and that's what kills you. Or is it a situation of just I can't live like this anymore. I need to go outside, even if it's going to kill me, because it's where I belong. I belong outside, and if I'm meant to die, I'm meant to die. There's a lot of these questions. And this is why I kind of love not having everything spoon fed to an audience of just like, okay, here's the story and digest it. It's like, no, 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 no. Here's a couple of bits of information and you fill in the blanks and you interpret it the way you want to interpret it, whether you're hopeful about it, whether you're pessimistic, or whether you're just, I don't know, up for some more bleak stories, because as if we don't have enough with this show, right?
Yeah, but it does give us a little bit of levity in that we get to see Ellie and Sam playing and like bonding
Hmm.
over this Endure and Survive comic book that they both love, and Ellie learning a
Yeah.
bit of sign language in the process, right? Like, I I think that again, Joel doesn't stop down and let like give downtime for them to be discovered or whatever, unless Ellie and Sam are like having such a good time and just getting to be kids for a minute, right? Like, I love it's almost like a really messed up play date. Like, it's like the
It
parents are,
really
like,
is.
sitting on the side talking about their kids as their kids are playing. It's a really messed up version of that, but I do think that's what allows Joel and Henry to both let their guards down a bit. Joel being the first one to come out and say like, "Listen man, I shouldn't have come at you in the way that I did and just assumed that like you were a rat for no good
Mhm.
reasons. I'm sure you had your reasons if it was to protect Sam." Just like Joel knows he's done some really morally depraved stuff to protect
Oh,
Ellie
yeah.
and he's going to do more. Like, they have to. So I don't think that happens unless Ellie and Sam are just really like bonding and having a nice moment.
Yeah, I think what's so great about the Henry and Sam of it is that yeah, you have the parallels of obviously Joel and Ellie, but ultimately they are brothers as well, and this reinforces Joel's want to get to Wyoming and get to Tommy because he feels like he's not protecting his younger brother, and there is like. Yeah, there is always this kind of like I'm the carer relationship when you are the older sibling for the younger one, and I don't care. Like, I mean, I'm much older than I was when I was younger and stuff. I still feel that kind of bond with my younger brother. It's like I kind of want to just make sure that he's doing all right, and like kind of care for him when I know that he needs kind of help with things. And I think that no matter the distance, I think no matter the age, I think that that is always going to be resonant, and it's a great way of Henry and Sam being used as a storytelling vessel of paralleling both stories at the same time. It's just I love it. I love it. A really good, like a simple, effective, and efficient choice of the storytelling. And to
Mhm.
have Henry recognize the conversation with Joel and then come back with, well, I can tell you're someone's father. Like you might not be hers, but you're someone's father. And to recognize that,
Mhm.
and for Joel to just shut that down and be like, all right, we're going. I was like, like,
It was a step too
yeah,
far for him. Yeah.
it really was because he doesn't because he realizes, I think, in that moment that someone else is seeing that he is displaying fatherly qualities towards Ellie, and I don't know if maybe he feels a sense of betrayal because he shouldn't do that because he has obviously a loyalty to Sarah's memory. Maybe like does he feel like he's somehow
Mm.
betraying that, or is it just a sense of weakness? Like because that's weakened him in the past, and he shouldn't be. He's a survivor. He has to be kind of like strong. He has to have the guards up. There's so many complexities to the emotions that must be running through his head, all while I think as well you're getting, and this isn't being articulated to Joel, but this sense of failure that's being mimicked between Henry and Sam and Joel as well, because immediately when we get Henry and Sam arriving into the attic with the doctor, he says to the doctor, "Oh yeah, he's seen some stuff, but I can't turn like back the clock. I can't stop that happened. We're just gonna have to deal with it." And Sam is scared because Henry is scared. Joel is feeling the exact same way. Like Ellie has seen a mass grave of people. Ellie has experienced some real hardship in the things that she's seen in the last couple of days. I mean, Ellie's shot and killed someone now because of Joel's failings, because of his hearing, because of like his choices to go through Kansas. The way the multitude in ways in which their stories are being mirrored against each other is just I can't
Mhm.
gush about this enough. I love it so much.
Yeah, and it's because we know through Henry telling the story about Kathleen's brother, Henry was a follower of his. Henry
Mm.
admired him. He wanted to overthrow FEDRA with him, but he was dealt a bad hand. His brother got leukemia and he had no choice but to work with FEDRA to save him. And so, knowing that Joel has had to do things he hasn't wanted to do because of he's protecting, whether it's Sarah or Tess or Ellie now, right? Like, or Tommy. He's done things to keep his people safe that he hasn't necessarily wanted to do. And the fact that we get them bonding over that, it's really, it tells you so much about what you need to know about Joel as a character, and the fact that when Henry does bring up that he's a father and he just shuts down immediately, there are so many possible reasons he does that, but all of it is to say that he's not ready yet to like confront
Yes.
that, to confront the fact that he does care about Ellie. He cares about her well-being and he needs to get her to safety, and she isn't cargo to him anymore.
Hmm.
Um it's it's really, it just tells you everything you need to know. It's played brilliantly, and I think it's so smart to expand on the characters of Henry and Sam in a way that tells you more about the characters that we care about most in Joel
Hmm.
and Ellie.
Yeah. And then just to circle back as well, I mean, as to do all of this and then include little Easter eggs like the Savage Starlight comics from the games.
Mhm.
For those who haven't played, like you go around and you collect those, they're little collectibles that kind of further achievements you can get in the games, and they're a comic series that Ellie likes. It's just a nice little touch. Just
Mhm.
kind of shows you that people that are making this TV show love and adore the games just as much as we do, which is just a
Yeah,
good addition, I think.
and it shows that in dark times, in difficult times, like, unlike what we're going through now, but still very difficult times, people do like to escape through media, whether it's
Hmm.
comics, books, movies, television. It is a way of
Podcasts.
escaping, and yeah, there you go. And really like connecting with something that gives you a sense of purpose and something to grip on to. And we know Sam loves superheroes, and now they're bonding over this comic, and it serves so many purposes, and I'm really happy they included it.
Yeah.
When Michael and I were little, this room seemed so big. I was really scared of thunder. So when there was a storm, Michael told me that this wasn't a room at all. That this was actually just a big wooden box. A big wooden box that nothing could get inside of. And it didn't matter if there was lightning or tornadoes or gunfire. He said, as long as we were together in our perfect box, we would be safe. He did that for me.
An interesting thing to move on to next, obviously, is we get a bit more on Kathleen and specifically kind of the dynamic between her and Perry, and kind of a bit more explanation as to why Kathleen is in the position Kathleen is in and kind of where her mindset is. We get them kind of obviously searching around. Kathleen seemingly goes missing for a small bit, and it seems that she's gone to reflect in what was her old childhood bedroom. I thought this scene was a choice, certainly, because it was a great way of like ratcheting up the tension. I think you get to the point where you're in the tunnels with the others and you're thinking, okay, surely something bad is going to happen here. And it just undercuts it a little bit and slows the pace back down and just goes, no, we're just going to keep things kind of like building. The conversation I thought was really illuminating between the two of them, and really kind of makes you see the cracks, like they're really brought to the surface of kind of how precarious this whole thing is.
Yeah, we find out that obviously Michael, her brother, was really the face of the revolution. But it wasn't until he died that action really, like, it, that's what pushed everyone over the edge, and
Mhm.
Kathleen was in charge of that. She was the head of it. And I think almost more importantly, the fact that we know this is Kathleen's childhood bedroom, which to me means she grew up in Kansas City. She's probably been here the entirety of the 20 years since Outbreak Day. And I think there's something like, again, like reading into all of this, imagine being in your hometown where you grew up, where you lived your adult life, where you've now but since been since Outbreak Day, and FEDRA comes in and takes it over and ruins it. How
Uh-huh.
much you have at stake, right? Like how much you care. I think it like heightens that level of they are ruining my home. Look at my bedroom. It used to be like a safe haven. It used to be the safe box that my brother protected me in. And it's no longer safe. And that's FEDRA's fault. I think it amps up all of those like vengeful, hateful feelings that she has in a way that we obviously weren't privy to previously. And also her saying Michael was the good one. Like he was the good one of the two of us. It wasn't me. It was never supposed to be me. And Perry then saying, but you were the one who took charge. You were the one who made those changes. We're all here with you. Maybe it was Michael's death that like started this whole thing, but you are the one who enacted change and you are the reason that we are all standing here now. It just tells you so much about Kathleen in like a very small scene.
Yeah, completely. And I love the fact that we really kind of get an understanding of why she has such an affection for her brother. Of course, obviously, it should be obvious. I mean, it's her brother, but we get the way in which he was her protector, and he was like the one that kind of sheltered her. Like she talks about like being within that kind of room, and she gets kind of like was it scared during the storms, and
Yeah.
he's like no, and he was the one that kind of made her feel safe in a space. Like it's so, again, good with the parallels with Joel and like the protection there, and like how things can go wrong if the protector doesn't go, if the protector isn't there to kind of like protect and fulfill their role.
Mhm.
And you can see why she is so cut up about this, because her entire safety net was taken away, and it's because, and as she said, because he showed vulnerability and showed weakness. Like she says that Michael wouldn't want her to hurt Henry, and that's why he got caught. Like that's why, because he was weak, and it's made her toughen up to such a degree where she, as much as she admires her brother and his memory, I think she does, like she sees weakness, like she sees the flaw
Yeah.
in it.
He was too soft for this world, right? Like
Yeah.
if not for him keeping Henry so close, Henry has valuable information that then he can use against Michael. And even knowing, even Michael knowing he's going to die, he is in jail and he is going to be executed, he still doesn't want Kathleen to take it out on Henry because it's understandable what he does, right? Like he is protecting Sam in the way that Michael is protecting Kathleen. Like he understands what it is like to have to be an older brother and a protector of someone he cares about. So he doesn't want Kathleen taking it out on Henry. But Kathleen sees her brother's death as like he died due to weakness. I would not display the weakness that he did. I think she views Kansas City as like she is protecting those people. She is protecting the revolutionaries. And the way in which to do that is to take out the collaborators, take out the rats, and keep her city safe. And yes,
Mhm.
obviously she's doing it in a way that is like really brutal and just having no remorse and no sensitivity at all, right? Like it's the complete, I think a lot of times it's middle ground that is the way to go. I think her brother is maybe displaying a bit of weakness. She is going completely in the opposite direction and saying everyone is a threat, everyone must die except for this little group of revolutionaries. Everyone else is a danger to us and we have to eliminate them. And of course, obviously, you add in the revenge aspect of he is the reason my brother is dead. I must hunt him down and kill him. And it is my number one top priority, obviously to her detriment, as we'll see in a little bit.
Completely. Um, I thought this scene was also a really great chance to kind of give a little bit more focus, obviously, to Perry, who's again a nice video game kind of like Easter egg. We've had it with Marlene being played by the same actress. Perry's played by Jeffrey Pierce, who was the voice actor for Tommy in the game, and I like seeing the original voice actor cast just pop up in all these kind of like
Yeah.
different roles. Who knew that Jeffrey Pierce could grow such an immaculate beard? It's
Truly, it's
resplendent.
incredible. I love a strong beard, and we usually get some nice beards in post-apocalyptic content, just because it's like, who's taking the time to shave? You go, Perry. Grow that nice beard.
Put the gun down. Slide it over to me. And then stay up here for another hour. That's all you have to do. Please don't do it. Please.
From this scene, then we cut back to the other group who are now outside of the tunnels. They made it through relatively unharmed. The video game player in me is jealous because I remember the exit of those tunnels and it being completely awful. But we do get to the point where they're on the outskirts of Kansas City and they get pinned down by a sniper, one of the guards that Kathleen referred to as being kind of on the edges and possibly out there and could find them. This is great because, again, talking a lot about the video game this time round, this is taken directly from one of the challenges where you as Joel have to sneak up behind the sniper, take him out, and then assume that role of the sniper and try and protect those from a distance. Really great choice, I think, to include this, but also to get rid of all the naysayers about how this isn't a zombie like piece of media. What? Here's your infected. You've been complaining that there haven't been enough. Well, we'll give you thousands.
Here's an entire horde. Yeah. And the way in which they have Joel say to Ellie, "Oh, do you trust me?" Right? Like there is this like we're proving that they've built this trust between them. They've really bonded. And they've changed things up slightly, right? So we do get this again, shot for shot, it looks very similar to the game. But the sniper himself is not as eagle-eyed as he is in the video
No.
game. He's a very sharp shooter in the video game, and to the point that I remember playing. There are snippets that I like can remember exactly what happened when I played the video game, and this is one of them where I remember finally getting to the sniper after fighting my way through his cronies, which we don't see on the show. Again, I don't think we needed them. It's fine.
No.
And I remember I was sneaking. I was crouching. I'm Joel, and I'm crouching in because I'm like, I'm gonna sneak up on this sniper. I'm gonna get him. And then no, he like pops and tries to strangle you. In the show, they make it this old man who is a terrible shot. It's dark out. He can't see. He's working with Kathleen, and Joel just begs him. He says,
Yeah.
please, just don't do it. Like he knows, don't do it. Like I don't want to have to kill you. Please don't. This guy essentially, completes suicide. Like he knows what's going to happen when he aims that gun at Joel. So it's very different than the video game. And it's just a small amount of empathy on the part of Joel. He doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to take this guy out. He knows he's just a cog in the machine, but he really has no choice. The guy gives him no choice. And I love that they made that decision. I think it's like, it's small, but really an important piece. And it also moves things along because we don't have Joel trying to evade this like really good, talented sniper for a few minutes of the show that we really didn't need.
No, I'm so glad you picked up on that as well because I thought this was one of the most profound choices that they made in the episode because I think the beauty of it is that Joel is away from everyone else. No one knows what Joel is doing in this scene right here. He's completely free of judgment and expectation, and it's Joel, I think, being as pure to Joel as he is, and he gives the guy an opportunity to get out of it alive. He literally says, put the gun down and stay up here for half an hour. Gives the guy an out. And the guy chooses not to take it. And Joel even pleads with him and says, please don't do it, please. Which shows to you that Joel isn't inherently a killer. Joel isn't an evil person. He does want to give people an out. But it's the protector role that he takes on. It's the expectation that is thrust upon him that forces him to do violent things because he feels like he has to. And I think this is the most profound piece of storytelling there is, because I think up until this point, you could come away with this real kind of just belief that Joel is awful and that Joel is just an evil person that just happens to be doing a good thing. And this just reinforces that that's completely not the case. And it's circumstance that is shaping him to be the way he is. And it's a great way of showing that he isn't dramatically different from the Joel that we got in the opening flashback of episode 1.
Yeah.
He's a good person. And it makes everything that comes before and it makes everything that comes after all the more heartbreaking, because you know that deep down, if there wasn't an apocalypse, if there wasn't an infected, if he hadn't lost his daughter, Joel could be a good guy. And he's denied that because of this whole scenario. And if it happens that way for him, imagine that for everyone. And it's a bit of a cop out to say, like, imagine it for Kathleen, like, kind of, because it's like, oh, let's imagine all baddies, like complex individuals. But I mean, people do make complex choices based on the situations that they're thrust into. And so, yeah, for me, I thought this was an impeccable choice and such a subtle one as well. It doesn't really grandstand. It doesn't be like, oh, look at the moral choice that we've like shown to the audience. It's just a small little throwaway line.
Yeah, and I do think also part of it is you have to imagine, right? This older man is a part of the resistance, so he's a part of the revolutionary. He is against FEDRA, who we know have been monsters for 20 years. So he's not inherently a bad person. And I think Joel also can kind of see people get swept up in a cause. Tommy got swept up in a cause. And so seeing that this guy could be a Tommy, I think is what lends him to have a little bit of sympathy and a little bit of grace for those people, but not if it's going to come at the expense of the people he loves and the people he's protecting. So he really doesn't have a choice. And taking what is a part of the video game that is much more hack and slash and shoot sort of aspect, and adding like that narrative dimensionality and that narrative depth to it, I think is so brilliant. It's like you said, it is so small and you blink and you miss it. But it is so important. It's just everything. And of course, it's not going to end well because he hears over the radio, oh, keep them there. We're almost there. Joel just yells out the window, everybody run. Like, it's so brutal. It's so brutal, but we're about to get to like one of this is the HBO budget, baby. You know, like this is everyone's like, where are the zombies? Where are the zombies? Nah, look at this scene, man. Look at this scene. It's incredible.
When the giant tank starts just bulldozing through, I adored this because I got real Dark Knight editing kind of vibes from the whole kind of like truck chase with the Joker. Like it was very kind of in that style of action sequence, and for me comparable with a big budget like film. And I was like, well, like you said, this is that HBO budget being put to good use with practical effects of actual cars getting thrown across this road, presenting you with a real kind of sense of absolute physical danger of Ellie, Henry, and Sam absolutely getting run down by this makeshift tank that has spray painted across the front, run, which is just so evil. So and again, taken from the video games, which is so good for being faithful to it and also kind of just using it so effectively.
I'll come out. Just let the kids go.
No. Sorry. The girl is with the man who killed Brian, and Sam... Well, Sam's with you.
You don't understand!
But I do. I know why you did what you did. But did you ever stop to think that maybe he was supposed to die?
He's just a fucking kid!
Well, kids die, Henry. They die all the time.
It's incredible. And Joel, of course, is trying to shoot at them. So again, from the video game, we are playing Joel as a sniper. He's attempting to shoot the tanks and save them. And unfortunately, Henry, Sam, and Ellie are stuck behind a car. And Kathleen says, like, basically, come out wherever you are. You need to come out now. Henry says, I will come out, but leave the kids. Kathleen, man, she takes like the teeniest ounce of sympathy you maybe still possess for her and crushes it by saying, I know why you did what you did, which basically squashes all doubt. We could say in our minds, like, maybe Kathleen didn't know that's the
Yeah.
reason Henry did what he did was to protect Sam. No, she knows. And she says, did you ever stop to think that he was supposed to die? She says, he's just a fucking kid, and kids die. They die all the time. Like, whoa, man, that is like dark, bleak, fucked. Like, it is so messed up. And so we know she's not gonna let Ellie and Sam go free at all. And Henry says, like, you gotta take Sam and run. I will offer myself up. Like, take him and go. And she is cocking her gun. She is ready to take aim at Henry and take him out. And it is only by the grace of a sinkhole that Henry doesn't get taken out. And this as a choice to, again, like, differ from the video game in which we see like humans, and then the infected come. And just out of nowhere, not like out of the bushes, out of the streets, like not out of the ground. My God, just seeing a tank get sunk into the ground, like HBO budget, hell yeah, it's incredible. The fire, everything about this scene is electric.
Yeah. I thought Kathleen's response to Henry in that moment, like Henry's pleading is just being like, he's just an effing kid. Like he's trying to humanize, like it's the whole thing of like what Brian did in the last episode. He was like try to get his name across and to humanize him because it's harder to kill people when they are human. But what Kathleen does so effectively, and she does this at the beginning when she talks about burning the bodies because it's quicker, she takes away the human element. She thinks of people not as people or as individuals. She refers to them as rats. She refers to them as collaborators. She never really thinks of people as individuals with agency, with lives, with thoughts, complexities. And it's a common thing in warfare. Like people that have come out of like Vietnam, for example, talk about how they completely dehumanized their enemies so that they could do the atrocities that they did. Like it happens in every single instance of warfare because it's the only way in which many of these people can do what they have to do in those scenarios. And Kathleen does it so effectively, probably because she's emotionally numb because of her loss and her grief. And to show that with the fact that she is so blasé, like, and just saying he's just a kid and that maybe they were supposed to die is just horrid. To have the sinkhole go down, like the hellish like imagery of it, like the effectiveness of just having a giant sinkhole into the ground and hell unleashing upon them and the fire. It was so good. So good. And we get our first look at a bloater. And again, we've been talking about a lot of video game stuff in this. We get a bloater. Originally, it's like in the it's when we meet Frank in the video game. It's in the school back then. Bloaters are no joke. They are big. They are huge. They are strong, and they're again so good. The way in which it kind of just the way it slams as it crawls out, and you go, "Oh, it! This is on, and this is a big deal."
Yeah, because immediately Kathleen and her crew are now forced to, okay, no, we got to deal with the infected thing happening now. And this is the thing she ignored. This is the thing she said, this is on the back burner while we deal with Henry and Sam. Well, it is no longer on the back burner. It is right in your face, literally. And Perry, the hero question mark that he is, tells Kathleen to like go and hide, right? Go hide somewhere. He's shooting at the bloater, and again, a little nod to the video game of his head just getting ripped in half by the bloater, just like happens when you're playing as Joel and those bloaters come for you. Suddenly now he's sniping infected to save Ellie, Henry, and Sam. And we see just like pop, pop, pop. Ellie, all of the ones going around Ellie are getting killed. She climbs into a car, and she sees is like a safety spot, which it is, until a teeny tiny menace of an infected child climbs in. It is so sick that this kid is wearing a Blue's Clues t-shirt, all right? Like, it is so messed up. And this, like, the acrobatics involved. Oh my gosh. This is the first time we've seen a kid as an infected. And it's not the last time we'll see in this episode alone. And it's coming for her. And Ellie stepping up and being a hero. She could just run. She easily could just run and get out of there. She sees Henry and Sam need help. And all she has is a knife. Like, here's the thing. Her gun is out of bullets at this point, right? Like, we don't see her reload that gun. We see her, boom, click. Nothing left to go.
Yep.
She runs over to save them with a little pocket knife, Stuart. Like, bad ass. Incredible. Come on.
And again, the setup, the imagery has been there the entire episode. We've had Sam making drawings of heroes coming to like protect them the whole way through. They pick up the comic Savage Starlight, which is all about the heroes. Again, you get the sense that like Ellie, collects them. She's got like 4, 5, 6, and 11. I think it was that she said like she's actively involved in this and she buys into the whole hero narrative. And Ellie, when given an opportunity to step up, decides to be a hero and to go and rescue them. And I think it was a great choice as well, because then you also get Joel sniping and being her number 2, being the one like, yeah, I've got you covered. And like being that kind of just almost like guardian angel as well, because Joel isn't there physically right next to them to protect them, but he's there in spirit, or at least they're in shells or bullets. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that also you get the kind of the real closeness of the threat of the infected with Henry and Sam. You get them clawing at their legs underneath the car, and that obviously is setting up something that comes up a little bit later. It's so well done. And of course, you get, I think, perhaps a little tropey, but I'm so bought into this at this point, of just amongst all the carnage and the chaos, they get away, and Kathleen is there and is like, you ain't getting away this time. And she gets probably the most poetic ending of all time after saying, just a kid, maybe they're meant to die, and dies at the hand of an infected child.
It's
Chef
perfect.
Kiss. Oh, love it.
It's everything. It's the immediate comeuppance that you want for Kathleen. This little kid just like leaping and launching herself on top of her and just ripping her to shreds. It is a little, maybe a teeny tiny like cheesy, but I don't care. Like, I was so happy to see it at that point. The moment that she says, maybe some kids are meant to die, like, fuck you, lady. I hope a kid eats your face off. What's wrong with you? Like, her saying he's just a kid as a negative thing when most people are like, but they're just a kid. What's wrong with you? She gets taken out. Joel has come down and is like, we gotta go. And we just see all of the infected taking over Kansas City. It's like this threat that Kansas City, right? For Kansas City, they've mostly been dealing with the threat of other human beings, not the threat of the infected. And now we see you should never, never underestimate the power of the infected in this world, because they have now, it takes 2 seconds, it takes one sinkhole, and all these infected have now taken over the city. And you have to imagine all of the people in Kansas City, they're not accustomed to having to deal with this threat. And therefore, you have to imagine that's it for Kansas City. Poof, it's gone in a matter of minutes.
Yeah. And like you said, the fact that they're all connected, the scale of it, I think it's the perfect explainer for anyone that's criticized the show for not having enough infected. This is why, because the people that we're following are survivors, and you don't survive if you stick around where these things are. They are death. It's totally different from the game in the sense of this is why they made this narrative choice to move away from spores to the tendrils and the mycelium that's all connected. Is that possibly there is a budgetary reason, like let's not get away from the practical element of it, but I think it makes the threat so much more visceral. It makes it so much more real.
Yeah.
You have to fear the infected. This can't be a Walking Dead scenario where they stumble up to you and you can quite easily just stab them and get away. If they are near you, you should be absolutely fearful. There is no safety when the infected are around. And I think this is the best way of illustrating it and just showing how bad things can go when they take out effectively a small militia in one skirmish. It's a great choice, I thought.
Yeah, especially because imagine if they had blew all their budget on like making spores and the air be the problem. We don't get this amazing scene. This is where you want your budget. You want your budget with an explosion, with a horde of infected crawling out from the underground and a massive bloater ripping someone's head in two. That's where
Yeah.
you want your budget. You know, I again, it's an adaptation, people, and they made the right choices with this adaptation, and we certainly cannot say that for every adaptation out there. So I
No.
loved it.
Not at all. And I think for most shows, that would obviously be the point where you cut the credits and that's it. You end on a high of an awesome action sequence. But no, this is The Last of Us. And we're going to twist the knife a little bit. As we get the aftermath, we get them all away in Sanctuary in a motel that seems to be several miles out from Kansas City. They found a room to stay in. And we get the revelation that Sam's been bit.
Ellie. Are you okay? Easy. Henry, give me the gun. Henry, give me the gun.
What did I do? What did I do? What did I do?
Henry, give me the gun. Give me the gun. Give me the gun, Henry. Give me the gun.
Henry, no!
It's really brutal.
Yeah, I've not been looking forward to talking about this section in particular because of how well they really do make this hit. It's so sad because you've got, for one thing, it's a kid being affected by this, which is awful. It's a kid as good as Sam has been, and especially one that's been portrayed incredibly well on screen. So of course you're sad that you're not going to get more of that, but more so for the fact that Ellie thinks that she can fix things and that she thinks she can be the hero, which is she was before and has been set up to be, and it all crumbles away. It's a tough one.
It's the worst for all of the reasons, right? Joel actually offering for Henry and Sam to accompany them to Wyoming. So they've made that deal. Oh, I'll tell Sam in the morning. Like it's that. It's Ellie finally having a friend, like a friend her, close to her age, but also she is protecting Sam in the way that Joel is protecting her. She is a little bit of his elder, right? Like she's taking him under her wing. And her thinking, she's a kid. She doesn't know how vaccines work. She doesn't know how this infection works. For all she knows, her blood can save him. And so her saying, my blood is medicine, and trying to save Sam, and promising him she'll stay awake with him, and then falling asleep. It it is all so brutal, especially when it is as someone as innocent and pure as Sam is. It's it's brutal for so many reasons, but the fact that it is such a good little kid and he's so young, and he battled so many things in his life, right? Like, he lived through leukemia in an
Yep.
apocalyptic world, a post-apocalyptic world. He lived through leukemia. He lived through facing the adversity of being a deaf kid in this world that is so supremely dangerous, and it's one bite that takes him out. And the fact that we have to see Ellie deal with that, and Ellie realize her blood didn't fix him. It's so tragic.
Yeah. And the kind of wider aspect of ultimately Kathleen, she wasn't right, but I mean, like, it was futile. It was all for nothing.
Mm,
It, I don't actually know. That's a bad thing. I don't think it was for nothing. I think it was for something much shorter than what they'd hoped for,
right.
and
They
it
they
wasn't
had
for the
made it
long
out.
term. Yeah, they made it out, which was something. But yeah, it was ultimately it wasn't what they wanted it to be. As well
No.
as that, you also get Joel and Henry kind of they have the joke about the comics,
Endure and
which
survive,
was
yeah.
I mean that shit's
That
redundant.
shit's redundant.
It's so funny because they
Everyone with
are
an endure and survive tattoo is like, "Oh, man."
but they are kind of like the jaded older guys that kind of do mock the kids for their optimism. They kind of they bond over that. Again, in the video game, you get the whole thing of them talking about like kind of what they would do in an ideal world. And I think Henry talks about taking a Harley and going on a big
Yeah.
like motorcycle trip, which is quite lovely. And we get the same kind of dynamic. But the whole stay awake with me and Bella's reaction the following morning is this is why Bella was cast. Like I can't put it into words, which is a terrible aspect for a podcast. But I just get so kind of like I just want to go It's just how can this be so good?
Well, and it's, the Sam asking, "Are you ever scared?" And then, she jokes, "Oh, scorpions, whatever." But she does
Yeah,
say, "I'm scared of ending up alone."
that,
And and we have Sam asking, "Do you think it's still them on the inside? Like, do you think you're still you?" And because he's been bitten, because he's so scared of what's
hmm
going to happen. And kind of both of those things coming true, right? Where he does turn alone. She's asleep. So he doesn't have anyone with him there when he turns. And the fact that when she wakes up and she says, "Oh, Sam," she's trying to call his name, he can't hear her. Which, scientists would say, well, he's still deaf, even though he is now
oh yeah,
turned and he's infected. But there is the question of, is he still him in there because he's deaf, right? Like, there is a question, there's a lingering question, and it makes it so much more brutal when he attacks her. And I love, again, we can talk a little bit about the change from the video game of them not he does not reveal this, and he reveals it to us, the player, the gamer. He does
hmm
not reveal it to Ellie in the video game. And I personally think this is so, it stomps on your heart that much more. The fact that he reveals it to her and that she tries to save him and can't, and the fact that she has her first kind of moment where she has failed as a protector in the way that Joel feels like he's failed as a protector, and almost losing her life because of it, right? Like, not taking Sam out and letting him turn, she gets attacked. And
yeah,
we heard from Tess, like, yeah, you're immune to being, the bite and everything. You're not immune to being ripped apart.
hmm
And to have Henry be forced to make the call to take out Sam, it's just like gut punch after gut punch after gut punch here in this scene.
yeah. The I wanted to very quickly circle back to what you said about the whole nature of like what Sam asked about whether you're still inside, because there is this bel belief fan theory, that the infected, at least in some stages, are aware of their situation. The way in which the cordyceps fungus operates is that it does take over motor functions, and ordinarily it takes over, I believe, corpses of ants. It doesn't, but I believe they are still alive in some scenarios. And the way in which the video game portrays it as well is that some of the noises of the infected are very distressed. I think at some points you hear like sobbing and kind of
Mhm.
wailing as if they really aren't happy with what they're doing. And it lends itself to the belief that maybe these people are conscious of what they're being forced to do under the control of this virus, which again adds to that horror element of it and makes it all the more brutal. Um, and for that to be afflicted onto Sam is just so evil. It's so horrible. But the ultimately, like you said, the way in which Sam attacks and goes, and Henry is the one that has to deal with the situation in the morning. It's again the way in which they do the choice of Henry's like initially like grabs the gun away from Joel, shoots at Joel's feet, and it's like, no, you're not going to kill my brother, kind of thing. But then for that brief moment, there's that logical turn of no, that's infected, and things are going to be bad. And I think out of instinct, because Henry isn't a killer either. We know that Henry hasn't done anything violent, and his first act of violence is to kill his younger brother, or at least not kill him, like pull him out of his misery. But ultimately,
Yeah.
he's the one to put a bullet in the kid's head, and he can't grapple with that. Like it's too much to handle too quickly, and Joel immediately just pleads for him to take the gun away from him, and isn't successful in it, and we get Henry killing himself, and it's so difficult to watch because you also get Bella Ramsey's reaction
Mm.
of just this. I can't explain it. It's almost like a cry of just of surprise, of pain, of grief, all wrapped up into one just outburst and just single tear kind of situation going on. It's just masterful acting.
Mhm.
And it
And
leaves me devastated every time I watch it.
yeah, and I also put myself in Joel's position of him being so wary to sign on to having Henry and Sam with them, accompanying them, helping them, finally saying, "Okay, yes, let's all go to Wyoming together." And then I have to imagine there is a tiny part of him that says it was a mistake to be with them because now Ellie has witnessed even worse things, right? Like she has witnessed her newest friend becoming infected and attacking her. She has witnessed a man kill himself in front of her, and after he shoots his brother. Like the immense amount of trauma that Ellie has now been through, I could see Joel saying this was a mistake to even be with them because if not, then she wouldn't have experienced this. And the fact that we know Joel is a practical guy. We know he lives, his world in this world very logically.
Mhm.
Um they wouldn't waste time burying the dead. You leave yourself open in those ways. Like it's a waste of time and resources and energy and on and on and on
Energy,
and on
yeah.
and on. Like Kathleen says earlier, bury, we're gonna burn them. It's quicker, it's easier, it's effective. They can't come back to haunt us, right? Um, he takes the time to bury them, and we know he's doing it for Ellie. Like this isn't for him.
Yeah.
It's all for Ellie. And Ellie leaving the little, what was it called again? The slate thing?
The magic slate, yeah.
Magic slate, that just says, I'm sorry on top, and her being the first to ask, which way is west? She's ready to move on. I think it, again, there's such small things that give you a larger sense of where Joel and Ellie are at, and that this was, yes, Tess died and that was brutal for Ellie, and yes, like all these other things have happened to, right, all these other things have happened to her. But this one cuts really deep, and I think makes her question the purpose of this trip, of, can I actually heal people? Because me putting the blood on Sam's wounds didn't do anything.
Hmm.
Um, it's so brutal. I mean, every episode is, but I think when you have kids and this relationship, this friendship that is built, and of course it's the kid that is like the most innocent that it happens to. He's the hero, the kid with the superhero mask. Like, gosh, it is so supremely brutal.
Yep. It's a it's a tough one. It really
Yep.
is. Oh gosh, it's yeah. I think your point about like Joel doing the graves, it's absolutely not for him. It's for Ellie. Ellie's the one that mourns at the graveside for Sam and places that epitaph down. Um, and Joel just kind of looks, and as Ellie walks away, you get that kind of glance from Joel to Ellie, and I think Joel in that moment kind of realizes, shit, like I think he realized in that moment that he is beginning to really care for this girl, and that he is possibly. It's a cautionary tale. Like I wonder if in that moment he's wondering if he is going to end up like Henry, whether or not he's going to destroy himself in the protection of this girl that he has been lumbered with, or whether or not he's making the same mistakes. There's so many, I'm sure, emotions running through Joel's mind, but I think in that moment where he kind of realizes, I think that's where it clicks and we get the whole kind of setup for everything that follows in the next episode, which again, from a storytelling perspective, is just, it's so satisfying to see
Mhm.
that in just a glance. It's
Yeah.
just wonderful.
And again, like, just credit to, I mean, everyone, the writers and the actors and everyone, but the fact that we literally met Henry and Sam like pretty much this episode. Like, yeah, they were
Yeah.
like a glimpse in the last episode, but in an hour of television, the fact that Henry and Sam's deaths absolutely destroy everyone says so much about like the way in which they developed these characters and the actors portrayed them. The fact that it just rips your freaking heart out when they die, and obviously like credit to Bella Ramsey, like the acting on that side as well. Yeah, it's in the, I mean, I don't know, in the game I did care about Henry and Sam, but not to the extent that this episode made me care about them. Like, yeah, of course
Yeah.
it's very sad in the game when they die, but the portrayal, it just makes it that much worse. Um it's so good. It's so good, and it sets up so much about, like, again, the brutality of the world, how unfair it is, and this hardening that we saw with Kathleen that we can kind of see developing in Ellie, and that is certainly present in Joel. Just this detachment that you have to have, the compartmentalization that you have to get
Mhm.
by.
Yeah. It's really good. I can't go into it anymore in terms of like why I think it is so incredibly well done. But yeah, it leaves you with an absolute sense of grief, which is probably the MO of everything that's going on. It sets everything up so incredibly well. It's a fantastic ending. So as an episode as a whole, I kind of think it's fair to treat this as one episode with the previous. It's one story that's self-contained, told across 2 episodes. I think this is so incredibly necessary. For one thing, to have the Joel and Ellie journey of everything, to get them from point A to point B, to kind of get them to where they're going beyond. It furthers their development of like them as a twosome, but then also gives them another kind of pairing to kind of play off against. And we get some great world building, which is, I think, desperately needed. Because while I appreciated in the video game we got to see Pittsburgh and the Hunters situation and having a human threat that wasn't FEDRA, and just seeing what the world is like out there. I mean, it's foreshadowed in episode 1 on the radio tower, and the guys warning John, saying like, "I hear what's out there beyond the QZ walls. It's awful." We get to see what that's like, admittedly through a bit of a small lens because it is so fresh from a QZ situation, but we kind of see the brutality of what humans can become outside of control and of this kind of dystopian government situation. Um, for me, I thought the episode was necessary, and I think the setup from the last episode was so worth it for it to pay off in the way it does in this. What are your thoughts on the episode as a whole?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it takes an okay section storyline from the video game and enhances it to be completely necessary and warranted and worth 2 episodes of investment. I think
Mhm.
everything that happens in this episode makes the episode before it feel like it was worthwhile to do and to take the time to do. To take 2 episodes out of a 9 episode season, that's a big
Mhm.
chunk.
Yeah.
And it's totally worth it to set up to show how Joel and Ellie have bonded, how Sam and Henry is kind of a warning. Like their storyline is a little bit of a warning of what can happen, what does happen a lot in this world. Um Beyond the fact that I think the portrayals of Sam and Henry are absolutely brilliant. Like the actors are absolutely incredible. And just to send Ellie one step further down the path of hardening her to the
Mhm.
world.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I love this episode as much as I hate it.
Yeah.
It's so heartbreaking in such a necessary way, and I think again we see Joel and Ellie have failed in an aspect. Yes, they've
Mhm.
moved forward and they're one step closer to Wyoming. They're losing things along the way,
Yeah.
and it's bringing them closer together in a way that is really scary for Joel. So, yeah, what more is there to say? It's incredible. It's brilliant.
They they do endure and they do survive, which is,
How redundant.
yeah. So for those of you who haven't watched the series as a whole, haven't played the games, I think now's probably your time to bail out, as we're going to probably dive into spoilers in a moment. If you are leaving us right now, please do subscribe. Means that we arrive in your podcatchers once a week, adds to the kind of subscription numbers and kind of builds the algos to get the kind of word out. So it's always wonderful. So look for us at Look for the Light Pod, on wherever you can find us. Which is pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty sure I've submitted the feed to absolutely everywhere that will take us, which is always fun to know. You can also find us on the social medias at Look for the Light Pod, and you can also email in your feedback at lookforthelightpodcast@gmail.com. But I think now we'll dive into some spoilers.
Mhm.
As much as this episode is brutal, I'm so happy that we get so much layering in this episode of things to come later in the series and of the video games. There's an it's so jam packed with incredible amounts of references and parallels to what comes up. I think for me, the most immediate is that Kathleen is a cautionary tale to Joel, or at least a warning to Joel, of what the Fireflies could be. They are a brutal force who is focused on getting to an end goal, and they very much do not care about the means. And obviously, knowing what they intend to do with Ellie when they kind of do get Ellie to Salt Lake, and what happens, it completely cements Joel's thinking in that moment, because he's seen what that approach can absolutely do and how destructive it is. I think it's fantastic that they get that across in such a kind of abstracted way. Like, it's not very clear. I mean, like, really, yes, okay, the parallel to the Fireflies and the resistance movement is very obvious because they are resistance movements against FEDRA, but the end goal is completely different, and it's nice to see that still matching up with what the Fireflies look to achieve. I really liked that aspect of the parallel.
Yeah, and gosh, just the references to Game 2 also, and like what we'll come to see probably in season 2 of the show, of one woman's warpath against someone who wronged her. Like, you know, in both Ellie and Abby, we get Kathleen, whose brother, her protector, is killed. She is gonna take revenge, and it will result in so many casualties. So many people, innocent bystanders, killed. You know, we could say the same thing about Ellie and Abby. That, like, you killed my protector, you killed my father, my relative, my, you know, my person. They're dead at your hands, and I will be coming after you come hell or high water. I don't care who stands in my way, even though the person who is no longer here, in Abby's father, in Joel, possibly would have said, please just move on. Please go somewhere else, find sanctuary, move on, forget about me and live your life. It does not matter to Kathleen. It does not matter to Ellie, and it does not matter to Abby. And the fact that we get it in season 1, when, you know, it's going to be a minute before we even meet Abby. It's so good on a rewatch, you know? It's so good in anticipation of season 2 to get this little nugget of a character that did not exist in the video games just getting placed in Kathleen, and to have to be a woman yet again. I will say, just like the amount of female representation and the fact that we're showing just like what a woman can do. Like, if she wants to seek revenge, she gonna do it. It's incredible.
Yeah, and to get, I think as well, like, kind of abstracting away from the story and like looking at it just as the, like, almost like the production element, because obviously you've got the assurity of it being an adaptation, which tends to kind of help media like TV shows and films and stuff, because you have an audience already. You don't have to work as hard in terms of like capturing the attention, because and you also setting expectations and that. But I think as well, to layer that theme and to have this episode be so highly rated, admittedly, it is highly rated in comparison to other episodes which have been brigaded and have been down rated by all sorts of other things. But to have the criticism from that aspect of the internet with Kathleen, but it still come out as being highly rated and be so jam-packed with the themes that are coming in game 2, I think probably did lend a hand in getting a second season and to get further kind of adaptations, because obviously it meant audience was bought in, and we want, as brutal as it is, I mean, I come out of this episode crying every time. I want more. Like, I am a glutton for this kind of torture. I think it's just clear that, like, this is why we're going to get more of this, because everyone did buy into it. And I think that's only because of how just so well done it was. I'm so happy that we do get so much kind of aspects of like other games, because we also get the parallels with like the DLC with Riley and that whole situation, that we get Sam turning and Ellie watching, well, not watching someone turn, but being aware that there is the risk of someone turning and then being hurt by that. And to know that Ellie has gone through this before, is so horrible to think that Ellie has gone through that much, because not only has she had to kill someone the day before and be reminded of Riley then, we then have that same situation happening again the next day.
Mm-hmm.
It makes my heart bleed for Ellie so much.
Well,
Like,
because she thinks this time will be different. This time I
Mm.
know I can save this person. I have the cure, right? My blood is medicine. I can help this time. And it's not true. She can't.
yeah.
I think she's able to connect with Sam again in more of a older sister role, but still, like, I can protect Sam. I couldn't protect Riley, but I can protect Sam. They connect
Mhm.
over the comics, right? Like, it's just someone her own age or close enough to her own age,
Mhm.
that she can bond with, and yet again being stripped of that person. And I think it's one more step in the direction of closing herself off, um, in a way that kids shouldn't have to. In a way that is, she's protecting herself because now she got close to Riley. Riley's gone. She got close to Sam. Sam is gone. The
Mhm.
world keeps taking people from her, and naturally, that's going to lead you to build some walls to protect yourself from feeling
Yeah.
so hurt every time. And to know that the viewers don't necessarily know about the Riley thing unless they've played the game yet. um Gosh, it's brutal. The more you know, the more it hurts.
Yeah, it really is, and it's so great that it does reward rewatches. It's one thing to like kind of say, okay, it's steep to rewatch because of the themes and the emotions that it evokes and stuff, but it really does reward you in just seeing how much they do give a nod to, not only
Mhm.
with the games but also with the show itself, and knowing kind of how they approach later episodes. Um, some really lovely touches with that. Um, and then also the whole say about the kind of nods to future episodes, the nods to Joel's revelation that comes in the final episode of the season.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's this is why you adapt stuff, right? It's so that you see these little through lines that in the video game, and you think, okay, well, maybe we can join that up with this. It's being given a bit more time for the pre kind of production of everything, and to kind of plan and to make things kind of match up and just make everything kind of just a little bit more refined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's knowing that Henry couldn't live with what he had to do, and knowing that Joel went through a similar thought process of,
Hmm.
I can't live without Sarah in the way that Henry can't live without Sam, and knowing what he had to do to Sam. Um and Joel being the one to try to talk him out of it, saying,
Hmm.
"No, no, don't, Henry, no." Um it's heartbreaking to know that Joel had a similar thought process, and that even though he himself is still alive and has found a new purpose in protecting Ellie, he wasn't able to save Henry and help Henry find a new purpose. Um it's brutal. It's the even more, again, like, the more you know, the more heartbreaking it is
Hmm.
that we're gonna get this revelation from Joel later on in the season, that he was at that point in his life. Um, it's so brutal. It's so heartbreaking. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah.
And I think it just makes the way in which Joel pleads for Henry just to put the gun down, because it's that clarity of knowing that
Mm,
later on something else can come that can reignite that spark once more. And I think that although that's not articulated by Joel until later on in the season, until we get that revelation of why he divulges about how he had tried to kill himself before, I think he deep down knows it, and deep down, that's why his pleading with Henry to put the gun down is a mixture of wanting to protect Ellie in that moment, just in case she catches a stray like shot, whether it's his own
mhm.
protection, but I think it's also for Henry's own protection, and to know that in time the wound's never going to fully go away, but it might heal enough that you might find
Mm-hmm.
purpose elsewhere. And it's a lovely touch. It's just
Mm-hmm.
very good quality. Oh, that was a doozy. That was a doozy.
Oh my god.
If you're still here and you're not just a pile of tears and sobbing, please do subscribe. It really does help us out. And we will be returning next week as we finally get our first view of Jackson, which I'm one of my favorites. I'm so looking forward to covering this episode. It's actually one of the main reasons why I really wanted to dive into this, because I love Jackson. It's just such a cool place and such a cool idea. And the episode itself just, I think it nails it, for a bit of a spoiler into what my reaction is going to be for next week. But we'll be getting into that next week. But Jess, before we go, should we wrap up with a little bit of Will Livingston?
Yes, please.
Why did the sniper have a bad attitude? Because he was always looking down on people. It's a dumb one, but thanks. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.